Hello, everyone. I'm Sean with Sean's Tech Blog again with Gina Riley, uh, and we're talking about why storytelling matters in interviews. So I'm gonna ask Gina here the first question here that I have here. Uh, what's the meaning behind the book title? Why qualified isn't enough? Let's start there.
Boy, it took a long time to get to that. I had 16 pages of single space notes, and I was really centering it around my program title called Career Velocity. And I ultimately figured out that the problem I'm trying to solve is answering a question that most job seekers have, which is I'm applying, applying, applying. Why is no one calling me? That spray and pray mentality, just shoot off as many applications as possible. And then that question, I was qualified for all of the things in the job description. Why didn't anyone call me? And the answer is being qualified isn't enough. You have to showcase that extra something that gets you the phone calls, because you have to assume that there is a percentage of people similarly qualified. And now with AI and everyone trying to game the system and look like exactly the job description on their resume, these recruiters are wise to it. They know when a resume's been created by AI and matches a JD exactly. So you've got to go the extra mile, not just with your how you apply, but how you tell your stories.
Okay, so that kind of answers hiring process has changed, right?
Oh yeah.
And and then what does career storytelling actually mean? What does that mean?
Yeah, so the way that I kind of define it is in my chapters 3 and 4, I have actual exercises. So my frameworks are in this book, Sean. It's not just, a book full of tips and bullet points. It's here's what you need to do, here's why you need to do it, here's how you do it. So that's in every chapter except for chapter 6. So chapters 3 and 4 are about creating your career story or your career thread. And I have a way for people to chronicle out their whole entire career story, and then to go back through and analyze what are the themes and patterns of my career? What am I most known to do? Why do I get tapped on the shoulder? Why do I get promoted? Why do I move from job to job? There's a story in that for each of us that's different. And that's part of the differentiating factors that you can include in your storytelling. The other differentiator in the storytelling is doing the career data vault in chapter 4, which is teasing out the main things, the main results that you have gotten over time, so that those are the things that you can talk about if those are the things, the problems that you're going to solve for that future employer. So kind of meshing the two together is how we are formulating that unique value proposition.
Okay. Before we go to the unique value proposition, I wanted to touch on the importance in, let's just say, LinkedIn, right? Because that's one of the more popular ones.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say, if you're trying to become, do you would you post what you are or what you want to be? Say, for my example, I'm in IT support, right? Or that's been my main experience, but I want to get into cybersecurity. So is that what I'm going to put on there, or how do I brand that?
you
Uh,
know for in your case in particular, it's a hybrid. It's like with a extensive career in IT support and technology development, whatever the thing is, you could put something like aspiring to or breaking into the cybersecurity space, through these various activities. So that could be part of the about summary. And it also could be a part of your most recent work history where you're alluding to the fact that that's what you're aiming for. Does that make sense?
yes, it makes sense. And then let's get into your unique value proposition. Why is that critical, and how would you change that in interviews and conversations?
Oh, that's a really good question. So the unique value proposition, or UVP for short, is the thing, it's our own personal story that is a meld of what I have in my chapters 1 through 5, which is who are you as a person and what drives you? Why do you do what you do? What are your natural talents? That's the Strengths Finder. So I use an assessment called the UMAP profile. You can find it at myumap.com. And there's 4 assessments: Strengths Finders, values, motivated and burnout skills, and then a personality assessment. And with that, we can extract language about what makes us as a human unique. Then we tease out in chapter 2 your leadership approach and put language around it. And then in chapters 3 and 4, like we talked about, we're teasing out the career thread, the themes and patterns of our career, and the things that we know we can do to drive results, culminating in my frameworks for the tell me about yourself narrative. And also what I have in there is something called the UVP scorecard. And it's like a repository of taking all the best highlights from those chapters and putting it onto a one pager. So now we have something to kind of think about, and we don't want to memorize it verbatim, and we don't want to necessarily be showing that in our application materials, but it's a way for us to refresh what makes us unique so we know what we're going to pull out depending on who we're talking to.
Okay, nice. Now landing interviews and standing out. So storytelling helps improve in the interview, your interview performance. So what are hiring managers really listening for?
That's a really good question. So what we have to think about is the minimum kind of barrier to entry are those qualifications, I'm using air quotes, that are kind of on the job description. And think of those as your hard skills, functional skills, industry expertise, those kinds of things that are kind of almost quantifiable, if you will. But then there's this other category of leadership skills, behavioral skills, and communication skills. And I'm going to just tip you off on what the percentages of importance is. To get those conversations going, we're talking 74% importance of meeting those functional and industry specs. 26% of the decision-making power is going to be on how we behave, how people perceive our trustworthiness and effectiveness in the way that we communicate, the way that we build relationships, the way that we influence people, the way that we collaborate. So what are hiring managers listening for? They first want to know, can you do this job? Are you going to take away my pain? And then are you going to do it in a way that is not a culture disruptor?
Okay. All right. Nice. And any advice for professionals who feel overlooked or stuck?
Any advice for people who are feeling overlooked and stuck? Okay, so for people who first do not have a unique value proposition formulated, that is your foundation. If you don't have it and you're having networking conversations and trying to get referrals, especially with people that already know us, but they don't quite know how to talk about what we do, that is our problem, not their problem. All they're going to do is smile and nod and not refer you because they can't confidently do it. So if you haven't started with that and then checked your assumptions, am I being clear? Then you're going to have misses along the way. Then we need to skip to chapters 7 and 8. Interview prep, preparing your stories of success. And I have all my frameworks in there on how to do that. And then chapter 8, job search strategy. If you're not sure what you're targeting, and you're not sure what companies you want to target, then you need to first hold informational conversations to inform your process. Otherwise, you need to build a target list. You need to organize them and take a crack at those 5 at a time. And you're reaching out and you're trying to build connections with people to get seen. Because Sean, if you don't get seen, you don't get heard. And the worst way to get seen and heard is through the applicant tracking systems and job boards.
Okay. And just to dive a little bit more on that, when we're talking scene, we're talking about DMs through LinkedIn or in person if we meet them at some kind of networking event. Is that what we're talking about? And they're just
All of it.
what is it you doing? Okay.
Yeah,
And then
all of it.
informational interview. What is it you do? What is the job title? Or you're showing interest? Is that what you would do with an informational interview?
Yeah. Your question is phenomenal. And everyone kind of confronts like that question when they do an informational and they're thinking, am I doing it right? And what am I supposed to be asking? Even my 23-year-old son, to navigate job search after, graduating, he's trying to figure out, well, what am I supposed to ask these people? Don't they just want to know I need a job? Yeah. When people do informationals, they generally know that you want a job, but you're not asking for a job. And so in chapter 8, I talk about a couple of frameworks that I use to hold informationals. One is a simple SWOT. If you're talking to someone, tell me about the strengths of your organization. What do you love? What's working well? Or what's going great in your group? that kind of thing. What are the W is like, what are some of the weaknesses or the challenges that your organization is facing? What are the opportunities your organization is trying to achieve? And then what is standing in your way of success? When you start to find out what is threatening the success of the organization, guess what? You need to recall your unique value proposition and explain how you can help. So that's the first way you do an informational. The second comes from a book called The 2-Hour Job Search by Steve Dalton, second edition. He's working on the third right now. And his model is called Tiara. It stands for, what are the trends that you're seeing in your organization? What insights do you have for me as I navigate my job search? What advice do you have? What resources do you recommend? And then the last one is particularly good for students, which is, what assignment would you give me, moving forward, to help prepare me for these jobs? So there's 2 answers to your question, Sean, on how to hold an informational.
Okay, thank you. Let me go to some questions that are kind of not in that line here. So, how can job seekers turn their everyday work experience into compelling stories, even if they feel their roles wasn't exciting? I don't know, somebody that's in warehouse or some kind of monotonous job.
Like maybe first line worker, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sure. I believe that we all have stories to tell of challenges in our role. And it doesn't matter if you're at Amazon in the warehouse, you're at Dutch Bros pulling coffee, or if you're babysitting for a family, right? There are stories of challenge. And I know this to be true because I used to volunteer in my son's high school, and I would go in for the juniors when we would be doing resume reviews, and then we would do interview prep with them. And all but one person that I mock interviewed didn't have any stories at all to tell. Most of the students had stories about challenges working with a team for a team project, as a leader in their athletics, right? The track team co-captain, for example, being on the newspaper, any of the clubs and activities, babysitting, and the responsibility that one might have. I had one young woman who actually was entrusted with a baby and 2 toddler age kids for when the parents went away overnight, and had to drive the kids to swim lessons and stuff. So you can examine what you do day to day and see it as mundane, or you could take advantage and exploit the challenges and talk about those so you can amplify the importance of what you were doing. The girl who was babysitting, hugely responsible. Is that someone I would trust with a job? Yeah. If I'm going to entrust her with an infant, you see what I'm saying? Now, if I'm in a warehouse, at an Amazon, maybe there's issues with throughput or lines going down. How did I help problem solve? How did I meet client, demands, etc.? So there's always a story, Sean. You have to find it.
Okay. All right. And let's touch on one more here. The balance of confidence with authenticity. When people sometimes struggle with self promotion, I feel like that applies to me sometimes because I just it's hard to sometimes self promote because I just feel like one of my answers is well, I just did it, I fixed it, and it's day to day. I feel like some of the issues, maybe it's hard for somebody, but I'm like, oh, that's just all in a day's work, right? But how do you? What advice would you give candidates on making sure they have some confidence and learn how to self promote?
So we do need to explain how we help, and so it doesn't have to be in a high ego in an inflated kind of way. One way that I like to mirror back to my clients what I call their awesome sauce is going back to that chapter 1 work where we uncovered their unique talents from StrengthsFinder, their values. Those 2 things tell me a lot about how they do what they do. And so, Sean, you probably have, I know you have unique talents in the way that you apply them that come easy to you. And that's why you're brushing it off. You're like, well, I just did it because ... You have these strengths on either how you build relationships, how you think, how you execute, or how you influence people. So if you start from a place of self-awareness, knowing what those things are, it's less about being promotional and more explaining how you got the work done. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it does. All right, and let's go back to career transitions and overcoming imposter syndrome and self doubt. I believe there's some people that have that when they start a new position or want to change into a new position.
Sure. I think this is a natural human feeling, and there's a lot of information out there about imposter syndrome. I wouldn't call myself an expert in it, like as a topic. What I will say is the best way to feel confident about what we're communicating is to feel that it is, go back to authentic and true. So if I know I did these things as a teammate and I helped get my team over the line regarding a project, then I need to talk confidently about my participation in that total effort. Does that make sense? I even have leaders that are like, well, I didn't do the whole thing. I'm like, okay, well, did you collaborate and set the strategy with your team of 5 direct reports? Yes, I did. Great. Did you lead all of those different functional areas, marketing and finance and manufacturing, to hit your goals? Yes, I did, but I didn't get the thing across the finish line. I'm like, yeah, you didn't do it yourself. You led the whole thing. You need to talk about leading the whole thing and how you did it.
Okay, and any actionable takeaways for the audience, like a mind shift that job seekers should adopt immediately, right now, wherever they're at.
Yes. The first thing I would say is applying online is a very low percentage of rate of return for your time. And as Steve Dalton, who I mentioned before with the 2-hour job search, the way he puts it is the job search is about energy management. So if you are fooling yourself into thinking that sitting behind your computer for a number of hours and cranking out applications is going to get you there when you're not getting a return on that investment, you must do something else. And that's the hard reality. So that's the first thing.
Okay. And then I want to go into, what do I see here? The pyramid here. So it's the thought leadership. Well, at the bottom it's the phase 1, right?
Correct.
Assess and
Yes.
prepare, right? Assess your leader attributes. Chronology, I'm assuming where, from getting to where you're at now. What results, career results, leadership solution. I guess if you've been in a leadership, right? Phase 2, I guess networking, right? And interviewing, marketing. And then phase 3, transformation, thought leadership. And some people may not have been in leadership roles, but maybe they have some leadership qualities. What would you say to them, or even the ones that are in leadership?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Back to kind of like my core evolution with career velocity, it's a formula for career transition success. And it doesn't matter what level you're at. I have my 23 and 25-year-old using my book to help them with their process, and their friends who are like 25 years old. And I've got a 30-year-old who are reading the book and doing the exercises. So it doesn't matter if you had a title of manager. What matters is that you let go of me using phrasing called like executive this or the stories being senior level, and think about that process. You've got to build your story in the foundation. Then you need to, unfortunately, you have to have a resume and a LinkedIn profile. But until you know what your story is, how are you informing your marketing, right? And then you have to have your interview stories ready. Then you need to execute a great job search strategy. If you don't know what you're targeting, you have to start with informationals, then go build your UVP. And then the top layer is thought leadership. And the reason why it's the 9th step is, how do we want to be found in the future? What little breadcrumbs are we going to put in our ecosystem, like posting on LinkedIn, to show people that we know our stuff in our sector or industry? So I'm not sure if that answered your question though, Sean.
I think so. I was aiming for something. I was just trying to see, I just wanted to put out what your career velocity was, right?
Okay, let me go back. The question I think that you were sort of asking too is like, if I'm not a leader or manager, how does some of this apply? And here's
Yeah.
the thing, we all lead from our own seat on the bus. So regardless if I have a title or if I'm a teammate, for example, I still need to collaborate and influence people and communicate. And those are those soft skills we talked about, the 26% of what helps throw us into getting that job offer are those extra things. And so we all need to be able to communicate how we build relationships and how we work with people. And so it doesn't matter if you have a leader title.
Okay, nice. And well, we're I think wrapping it up here. Bonus would be if you want. Um, as a you've been a hiring manager, correct?
I actually I haven't had like manager title where I have had a team, but
Oh,
I've worked with a lot of people who have led,
okay,
multi-million and billion-dollar teams.
okay, okay. So, have you been in the decision making, like in HR when you were in HR?
So my roles in HR were recruitment. Then I was an HR business partner. So I was the partner to a vice president of a whole group, and I was like I was the business partner for the people on that team. And then I have done training and development. So I haven't been, a manager of a team.
Okay, sure, sure. Okay, all right. I guess I can skip that. I was just trying to see, what do you think? Is there a way that hiring is going on in this? Is it any different now? Is it a tighter labor market? And is there any way that on either side the candidate can make it themselves better, and maybe the hiring managers can make it a little bit easier? Uh,
That's like a whole nother topic, is how companies can do it better. I mean, the main thing is, there's ghosting on both sides. We can't only blame job seekers. We can't only blame hiring managers and companies. Job seekers also ghost. Job seekers say they'll start a job and don't show up. So that's kind of its own like horrible topic, if you will. But what could people be doing to make it easier? Is that what you're really asking? This whole process?
yeah, well, for kind of, maybe, I guess it's kind of like there's the tips to get in it, but maybe there's a little bit pull from each side. Like one thing I would point out was, maybe they should close the job application after 1,000+ people are applying to it. I don't know how they do
Oh
that.
yeah, there are so many things that companies can do, and there's different philosophies on why things are the way that they are, and it depends on how that search is being managed. So for example, in working with Talence Group, most of the time we leave the job open until the person has said yes and signed. So that could be 6 months down the line. And
Mm,
if people are applying, we're like, thanks for applying. We have people in the pipeline and we'll let you know if it doesn't work out. But we respond and we tell them at least once, we got your application and we're already farther down the road. We'll let you know. But that's it.
okay.
And then you don't sit by the phone, and you should not, because that's silly.
Yeah.
But that's one company that I have worked with, right? That I feel
Yeah.
like is super high ethics.
Yeah. Very, very nice. Okay. Well, thank you, Gina. Any motivation for this 2026 for job seekers?
Uh, the motivation, hopefully your listeners, Sean, walk away with, gosh, I wonder what my unique value proposition is. I wonder how I would communicate that. And maybe I should go pressure test it and see if it's landing with people. Because if it's not, I can tell you for sure people cannot refer you if you're not clear. So that's the first thing you need to walk away and do.
Okay. And then, if where do we find you? I'm gonna put the links up there, but
Yeah.
better if is do you have a Medium blog? Do you have other places where we can
Thanks.
find you?
Yeah. I've got a couple things. One is I'm at GinaRileyConsulting.com, GINARILEY. And I have a ton of free resources on there. There's a resources page with upwards of 50 articles that relate to every aspect of my triangle. And 25 of those are Forbes Coaches Council articles that I've written myself. So on top of that, you can find me on LinkedIn. I have a newsletter called Career Velocity, and I've got about 8,000 subscribers there. And I try to post, 3 to 5 times a week, and I try to get a newsletter out with regularity. So those are two places. I also have a Spotify playlist too. So I have over 50 podcast appearances, and you can download that too. It's Gina Riley Career Coach. So those are 3 places.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna end the recording here. If you can just hang out just for a little bit. Let me stop it here. Thank you. This has been Sean's Tech Blog with guest speaker Gina Riley. Thank you.